The time is just gone 19 minutes past 8 a.m. and we kick off this morning talking with David van Wyk, researcher at the Benchmarks Foundation. And we're talking about the ANC, the African National Congress, who have now welcomed the resignation of Northwest Premier Job Mokgoro. David, good morning to you and welcome to the show.
Good morning, and good morning to your listeners, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, David, obviously you've got quite an insight into what goes on in the Premier's office through your experience. And just looking at these latest developments, the resignation of the Northwest Premier, are you surprised that he's resigned?
Well, I think that to some extent it's a pity that he has resigned because he was the interim administrator of that province when Mangope fell, and he was the Director General in that province under Popo Molefe's first term. And he's quite an accomplished individual. Maybe he was a bit old for the job, but I think that the factionalism within the ANC in that province actually cost him his job, and ultimately led to his resignation. There are factions there that are around Supra Mahunyaphelo, the previous premier, who was a pro-Zuma person. And of course, there were factions from the Vryburg area, the Klerksdorp area, and the Rustenburg area. These factions have always been there. And if you are a premier, you have to try and keep these factions together in that province if you are to move forward. And unfortunately, this factionalism has affected the ruling party in that province since 1994, and they continue to affect that province even now. There has been some confusion around his resignation because the interim provincial committee announced Bushi Mahape as the new interim premier, but they forgot that Job would first have to resign from being a member of the provincial legislature before Bushi could actually move in, because Bushi is not elected by the electorate. And so what happened is that the MEC for Finance, Molalepule Rosho, is now the interim premier. And one wonders how this thing is going to play out, because if Job does not resign from the provincial legislature, then Bushi won't be able to become premier.
Yes. Now, we've heard Job Mokgoro saying that the past 3 years as a premier in that province has been a bumpy ride. Apart from the factionalism, any other issues that obviously that he found obviously were challenging and which made his job a lot more difficult?
Well, I think that there was immense corruption, especially at the local government level, in various of a lot of the provincial or the local governments in that province, around Brits, for example, are under administration, because of the levels of corruption. JB Marks and so on as well. So the levels of corruption was absolutely immense within the province, and they relate back to Supra Mahunyapelo's reign as a premier. And a lot of the local governments in that province are actually dysfunctional as we speak. There's also a lot of questions around corruption involving finance for traditional authorities, specifically the D account, which was an old problem that dates back to 2, 3 premiers back already. The fact that mining companies paid royalties into the provincial government, and those royalties actually never reached the beneficiaries of those royalties, especially around the Rustenburg area and so on. And then there are also disputes of traditional leadership within many communities. It's a very rich province with great potential for development, but unfortunately, because it is so rich, there's a big struggle within the ruling party, within different traditional groupings, and also between local governments and within local governments and so on, about those resources that come in potentially from the mining industry to local government, to traditional authorities, and to the provincial government, and how that is dispersed.
Yes, and also, David, it does appear, and I'm certain what is playing out on a national level in terms of factionalism is now playing out on a provincial level.
Indeed, the ANC is an organization that is in severe trouble in the run-up to the local government elections because its staff, its head office staff and its office staff in the provinces and so on have not been paid, and at the moment they're on strike. One does not know how the organization is going to run an election when it doesn't have the finances with which to pay its staff, let alone to pay for a very expensive exercise of elections. And we see that the ANC has not submitted its candidate lists in time for the local government, and they are begging the IEC to extend the submission period so that they can submit. So all in all, I think that we are heading for interesting but very difficult times with the ruling party as it moves towards the local government elections.
Well, certainly, and we also heard not very long ago about SARS taking out money from the ANC's bank account because they had not paid over whatever was due to SARS as well in terms of payroll taxes and PAYE and the like. And now we have the situation where staff is not paid. But just looking at the ANC and their response to Job's resignation, and they basically calling it a discipline, calling him a disciplined cadre. Now, obviously, these are strong words that are being used coming from the ANC, talking about discipline and about the cadres being disciplined.
Well, I think that the problem for me is this: the Job's resignation came because he was pushed to resign. I don't think that he's resigning out of his own free will, if we are to be honest. They are saying that he is disciplined because he accepted the resignation, the push to resign from the interim provincial committee and from Hlomani Chauke and so on, the acting chair of the ANC in that province. Um, and the problem for Job is that he couldn't really manage the factions, I think. And so what we are seeing playing itself out is this factional war. And there is a faction around Bushi Mahape that is keen for him to become the premier of the province so that they could advance their particular cause, as opposed to the Supra Maunya Pelo faction, who also would like to have their candidates as the premier. I think that Job is a disciplined cadre in that he accepted the push to resign, but I don't know whether it's necessarily in the interest of the organization that he did.
Well, it does appear the ANC is obviously playing with words, and we've even seen the spokesperson Pule Mabe thanking Mokgoro, but saying accepting the party's decision for him to step down. So at the end of the day, as you mentioned, that he was pushed to resign, and this obviously is confirmed by the statement made by Pule Mabe.
Yes, I think that the provincial ANC must admit that at a branch level structure and at a regional structure, district level structure, they are dysfunctional, and they have not had proper, branch level functioning meetings and so on, and also district and regional level conferences and so on, leading to provincial conferences. It's been chaotic for the last 3 or 4 years, and uh, the interim committee is not an elected committee by the branches and so on, and one doesn't know if the branches in that province are at all functional. And it's this kind of level of organizational chaos also that is contributing to the situation within the province. They really, really will have to become much more disciplined than what they claim to be in terms of getting their branches and so on sorted out and organized and functional. You cannot run a provincial structure of an organization without its branches being properly organized and functional, its membership lists and so on being up to date, and there being a proper democracy and discussion around the lists and so on and candidates that they are pushing forward into the elections that are coming up soon.
Yes. Now, obviously, what has happened in the Northwest is just one example of what we see happening right across the country. David, how is this likely to impact on the ANC and its performance in the local government elections?
Well, I think in the Northwest Province, if they don't get organized, there is an organization that is very organized, and that's the EFF. If you listen to Malema and Shivambu and so on, they actually pride themselves in that they're building an organization and they're making sure that their branch levels and so on are functional. So just the lack of organization within the ruling party might cost them dearly in that province and might actually promote the EFF into a very powerful position.
Well, David, thank you very much for that. And as always, we appreciate you taking time out, talking to us here at Salam Media. All the best to you, sir, and please take care. Please be safe.
And thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
David van Wyk, Benchmarks Foundation researcher with us this morning.